meeting. First order of business is roll call.
Goldenitz,
Here.
Burley, Almascati, Hernan,
Here.
Hageman. Here. Jones.
Here.
McAlexander.
Here.
You have a quorum of 5.
That's good. Our next order of business is approval of the agenda. Anybody got any comments?
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Or moving too quick? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the 4/10/24 meeting minutes. No comments? We have a motion?
I'll move approval as submitted.
Second.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public comments for items not on the published agenda. State your name, address. Evgenia, write it down.
I'll walk better after next week. Larry Friedman, 32535 Bingham Road. Okay, the reason I'm here, I'm no expert on roads, but I've gotten wind of one of the ideas that's you guys are thinking about as far as roads, that is, as far as I'm concerned, totally ridiculous. To consider making a distinction between residents that live on private roads from people who live on public roads. That is ridiculous to think that way. I mean, from so many standpoints. I mean, for examples,
No.
are you going to, or not you, are we going to start thinking that people who don't have children should be excused from paying school taxes or library costs? You can't make that distinction. If somebody lives in Bingham Farms, if they choose to live on with private roads, that's fine. They have to, pony up for the roads that get them out of their village. They don't helicopter in and out. They use all the roads. And then you could use the aspect of, I drive a sedan. My next door neighbor, if he drives a Dodge pickup truck that weighs 3 times as much or something, and he's taking more out of the road, is he gonna be charged differently than I am because I'm just driving a sedan? I don't understand the idea of making a distinction of how much you participate in the village. We're all in this together. And I just think that kind of thinking is completely, I don't know who came up with that, but I don't think you can make that distinction. So as a resident, I'm voicing my opinion.
Okay, thank you. We were asked.
I just, I'm glad you're here, Larry, because we run these meetings a little bit more informally than the regular ones, so
Okay.
we can like talk back and forth a little bit.
Okay, fine.
I was gonna respond to your email, but since you're here,
Oh,
I get a
okay.
chance to like talk with you
Okay,
right now.
good. I'd like to hear where that thinking's coming from.
Sure, so, one of the things you said is that they all use the roads, that everyone uses the roads, and
Well, there's probably exceptions.
well, it's like a while ago, you had a house that was on Old Orchard Trail, I think it was, that there were some trees taken down or whatever.
Correct.
I had to go look up where Old Orchard Trail was. And that is the first time in 6 years of living here that I've ever driven on that road, because I wanted to see what was going on. There are,
Good for you.
there are like 200 people in the condo, 200 units in the condo complex that I live in. And I bet you out of those 200 people, maybe 10 know where Sager Court, for example,
Right.
is. So, I mean, that's part of the problem, is that not everybody does use roads. I mean, if the road had like a drugstore on it, where people went to, or it had, I don't know, a grocery store or a business or whatever, but the only road of the ones that we're responsible for, obviously, we're not responsible for 13 and 14 Telegraph. The only one that we're responsible for that really goes anywhere is Bingham Road. Right, I mean, that at least goes between 13 and 14. All the other roads, nobody who lives in the private roads has any like reason to be on those roads at all.
Do you have any reason to pay school taxes?
Well, part of the reason that you pay school taxes or you move into a district that has good schools is because it helps your property values. But let me just, one other point, and that is, up until like very recently, I thought for sure that whatever proposal we were gonna have to do was gonna have to go on the ballot. Right, you would wanna have a vote on it. And the problem is that I don't think it would pass. I don't think any proposal would pass when you're asking 51% of the people who are gonna get, at least in a lot of people's view, no benefit from these. Why would they vote for it? I mean, that's part of the issue, is like, if you're gonna get anything to
I
pass.
agree. If I was in your shoes, I'd be speaking the same way.
Right, so hopefully we can come up with some sort of a compromise that maybe might be palatable to everybody. And I don't think anyone has suggested, at least I certainly wouldn't be in favor of a proposal that said that, you know, that the entire cost of doing Sacred Court should be borne by the people on Sacred Court. We already have like $2.7 million, which everybody paid taxes in, and that money for sure is gonna be spent, which would reduce the cost for, you know, all the private roads or all the public roads, and some of that money was paid in by private road people. I'm totally fine with it. I would like to get something that everybody in the village could at least stomach. I mean, what I'd really like is for someone in the village to win the next $1 billion lottery and give us like $5 million and not have to do any of this, but I think that's unlikely. So the issue is like, how do we come up with a proposal that, like, you know, will pass and that is try to be fair to everybody and including the people.
Okay,
On the public
I
roads.
agree with your thinking in terms of trying to find a compromise. That's the right way of thinking here, and it's the way thinking should be going on in Washington DC as well. But it doesn't. So this is good thinking, but I'm here to tell that this is ridiculous to start deciding, well, who drives here and who doesn't drive here. So the ones that do drive here, they should pay, and the ones that don't should be free. That kind of thinking, you could expand that to so many different things that we're all paying taxes for, that, you know, I start thinking, I mean, I gave a couple of examples, the size of your car,
Larry, we got the gist of your.
right, okay, right, exactly.
And he doesn't represent the feelings of the committee as a whole.
Correct.
That's his individual
Correct.
biased opinion.
Okay.
So.
I like to hear the fact that you think of compromise.
Could I
That's
respond
what
to-
works.
Could I respond to just
Oh, sure.
Wait,
Sorry, just
briefly? I
briefly.
won't take up a lot of time. We are all, both private road people and village road people are taxed at the same rate. Everybody's paying the same tax. What you pay is based on your home value. But there's no difference in the rate we're being taxed. And this committee, by the way, we aren't even gonna recommend. The charge that we have is to investigate and put before the council an array of possible solutions to this problem. I don't think as a group, we're gonna recommend any one over another. That's the council's job.
That's what we were
We're an
given,
investigative
I was
body.
told that you're only supposed to give them 3.
3 to 5, and we might have one that drifts over into sort of a 6.
Right. And my fellow members here are more skilled in other engineering, things like that, finance. A thorough job is being done, and I think a very presentable array is gonna be passed on to council. We won't recommend,
Absolutely not.
we won't.
We're not gonna take ownership of any of it.
But to clarify this business about taxes, everyone is being taxed at the same rate. Always have been in the village, as far as I know. People on private roads get less for their tax dollar. They don't get their road plowed. They don't get full police service. If somebody's speeding down your street or running stop signs in the condo, sorry, the police department cannot enforce on a private road. So we don't get that protection. We don't get engineering services. If we need to work on our road, we gotta go hire an engineering company, even though we might, some small street with 6 houses, it's gonna have to pay all those it's a very unequal situation, and it's not exactly akin to the example, and you're the second person to bring it up, that people pay taxes to the schools, even though they might choose to send their kid to a private school. Okay, the analogy fails because if that family decides they want to send their kid to the public school, they'd be told, nope, sorry, people on your street can't come to the school.
So Larry,
That's
you're
the
gonna hang out for the whole
situation.
meeting? Because Tony's got a presentation that's gonna explain all this stuff.
Oh, okay. I'd like
Yeah,
to
this is
hear-
actually on the agenda. We have
But-
both this
It
and
is,
the
right.
proposal.
Some of what you're saying, I mean, I understand if I was in your shoes and looking at it. But you did make a choice to live where you do.
Yes,
And
Right.
the fact is, you can expand this to federal things that, you know, we pay for, national parks or something that are so, I don't know if that's a good, but, you know, nationally, so, you know, but the point is, we're all in this together.
yes,
And to think of a
and
special,
we're all paying equally.
right,
right
and
now.
a special assessment for roads to try and think about how we're gonna keep the quote, public roads, better, it's still a tax. I mean, it may not qualify as a school tax or a library, it's still a tax,
It would be a millage, yeah,
right?
So
right,
if you're gonna hang out for the rest of the meeting, all this stuff is gonna be explained in
right.
detail,
Okay,
okay?
Okay.
And just understand, our mission is to come up with proposals.
right.
well, I'm here just to tell you that I
We're
think
not
that
gonna
proposal is not a good one,
Okay,
in my opinion.
okay, it's your opinion.
I like what Kurt has to say, though, in terms of finding a compromise, that's what's
And
good.
I like what Tony has to say, so now we're even. Okay. Are we done with comments? We do have presentations scheduled for tonight. And I guess we could do Tony's first.
Okay, this kind of segues into it. All of you have seen this memo. I did it because especially for the little table on the front page, that compares the services that Village Road residents get to those that private road residents get. And I did that because I think many people in the village are not aware of what a big difference it is. And, so I wanted this to go just like all the other wonderful work that the other members have done. I would like this to be part of our package that goes to the council, because I thought it was informative. And it never been before the committee. So I thought, let's put it on the agenda. If people want to tweak it, if there's anything they're not happy with, just as we did with the other ones, I'd like it to be part of the package. That's my point. You've all seen it.
So can you go through a few details for somebody like Larry?
Sure, there are more voters living on private roads than there are on public roads. So as a practical matter, their concerns have to be considered. Otherwise, you're gonna go anywhere because you're not gonna get a majority in favor of anything you do. And they're not all condos, by the way. There are some 24 single-family homes that are on private roads that are not part of the condo developments. So everybody thinks, oh, it's those condo people. Well, it's not all just condo. And I think I went through this earlier, but Village Road residents and private road residents get full fire and EMS services. If your house is on fire, you're being broken into, the cops will come. As I said earlier, if they're speeding down your street and blowing stop signs, if you're on a private road, you're on your own. There isn't much you can do. Everybody gets trash collection. That's something we get for our tax dollar. Road maintenance and repair. Village road people get it, private road people get nothing. They pay their own way. My neighborhood, I haven't lived there that long, but they recently spent about $350,000 on roads in the condominium, and every year it's $80,000 for snow removal. All being borne by the people who live there. Whereas people on the village roads get it for their tax dollar. We pay the same tax, we don't get that. And I talked about engineering services. So those are the things that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, so I put it in the memo so people could see the comparison. I think this all happened, it's nobody's fault. It happens over time. I've served on village councils and planning commissions in Beverly Hills for a long time, and I voted for and supported private road developments when they came before us over the years, because they fit the master plan. They would be good for the village, they'd improve the tax base, why not? It's not until decades later that you realize that you've created a population that you're taxing that you aren't giving services to, and they're never gonna vote for a village. So you create a problem over a long period of time. And in Beverly Hills, it's a small percentage on private roads. I'd say 10% maybe. They're never gonna have any political clout. Here, it's a completely opposite situation. They're now a majority of voters on private roads. So I think it's a problem that has to be addressed by the council if we're gonna solve this. And it'll never be perfect, it'll never be exactly fair, but it sure is lopsided now, and it ought to be tweaked. That's where my memo goes. And I put forth some things that I have seen work in the Beverly Hills situation, because I came to the Beverly Hills Council and said, we've got a problem here, we're creating a population of people who will never support a millage. What can you do about it? And they said, well, they came up with some solutions. One was, if a private road neighborhood is doing a road project that is similar in character to one being done by the village, you can piggyback on, because the bigger your project, the less you pay. Economies of scale really matter when it comes to road work. That would cost the village nothing extra. In fact, might save them something because they get the economy of scale kick as well. The other things, let me look at my notes here. Give private neighborhoods the opportunity to convey their road back to the village. Maybe they want to make the road into a village road. My neighborhood in Beverly Hills investigated that. We had an engineering analysis, the village paid for that. And it was concluded that the road was a liability. And our neighborhood would need to pay upward of 200 grand to get the village to take it back. The neighborhood board gave it serious consideration. Only 20 houses would have been a chunk of money to come up with, but then we'd have been covered. We'd have had the same service. There were logistical problems with snow plowing because of small driveways. It was more a physical obstacle to doing it than a financial one. Financial is very tempting. That would be an option. Let people give their road back to the village. They'd have to pay unless the road was in A+ condition, and I don't think any of them are. Another thing is to provide some form of engineering services. When a private neighborhood wants to do their road, it's a heck of a lot of money for them to come up with, but maybe we could we, being the village, could get an engineering company on retainer in some way, that they'd be available to consult with private neighborhoods who need advice about how to do their road, because it's not a job for an amateur. Most people don't know any more about buying a road than they do about buying a helicopter. What do you look for? How do you know you're getting value? So engineering services would be a perk that perhaps the village could find a way to provide to private road residents, so they'd be getting something for being taxed the same. And then the last category is a specialty that these guys have worked on, which is coming up with a scheme for special assessing that would somehow equalize this. And that's their category, and I won't,
That's next.
that's their territory, so I'm gonna defer to them on that. But there might be a way to equalize this a little bit. Right now, it's like this. If we get it more like that, I think people would do the public spirited thing. I'd like if we went out and sold it, and pitched it to people. You know, I've gone out and sold millages in Beverly Hills. I've talked to groups and gone to neighborhood meetings. If you've got a really appealing plan that would make it more fair, even if it's not perfectly fair, what I see of this community is people would likely support it. They are a public spirited community. So that's where my memo goes, and I wanted it to be part of our package.
It's part of what our mandate was from the village council to come up with various proposals. Cross the whole stream of logic, and we're doing it. It's not like anybody has a, special purpose in mind when they go through these things.
And it's not like schools. Because you would be turned away at the door. If the analogy were perfect. When I took my kid out of private school and took him to the public school, they'd say, oh, sorry, you don't live on the right street, you can't send your kid here, even though you're paying the same taxes. That's the situation that the private road people are in. So it's not a good analogy.
Well, the school thing, just to answer, that I was thinking about is if you have two homes on a public, a public road thing, and you, both of them could, but they're both paying taxes, both of them could, but one of the houses doesn't have any kids.
Yes, right. And people without kids often support school millages because they know it kicks their real
Right,
estate
and
back.
some resent
And
it.
some they don't. Some don't want to do it, right? But it's there for them if they wanted it. They aren't being denied it. They've chosen not to have a kid. If they had 10 kids, they could send them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Did somebody have a hand up over
I was just curious.
there? Name and address, please.
Kathy Machipian, 3274 Bingham Lane. That you're saying that children living in Bingham Woods can't go to Bingham Farms Elementary?
No. I'm responding to the argument that's been made. That why should the private road people mind paying taxes? Because after all, lots of people pay taxes for public schools, but send their kid to Country Day and pay the tuition there, and they don't complain. And my response is, it's not a good analogy, because that family who's sending their kid to private school could change their mind and send their kid to public school. But the person on the private road can't make that choice. It would be like pulling your kid out of Country Day and showing up at Bingham Farms being said, oh, no, not from your street. We'll take your tax, we'll take your tax money, but no, your kid can't come here because you're not on the right street.
But-
I'm saying the school analogy doesn't work. That's all.
So her question is, if you live in Bingham Woods and you do that, what you said, are you saying that they couldn't send their kids to public school?
No. I'm just saying that it's not the same situation as paying for school taxes, though choosing to send your kid to a private school. It's not the same situation for people on private roads. Because they don't get to make a choice to say, oh, well, I don't like this private road anymore. I'm just gonna make it a village road. Well, they can't do that. Well, a private school parent can pull their kid out and send them to public school.
They could.
They could, right. Right.
Okay. We got another presentation. Oh, you got a comment?
Yeah, you know me, I have to have a comment about everything. In regard to your memo, you know, obviously that I have a lot of the same concerns that you do. I've shown this memo, or at least I've talked about it with one other person. And they had maybe a couple of comments that I'd just like you to consider before it gets, the final
Sure,
version
sure.
gets. And that is that, the Bingham Woods has spent $80,000 per year over the last 4 years for snow removal.
Yes,
That sounds really high.
it's stunning. And I double checked it with the board, with the president, the treasurer. That's what it is. Now, that does include driveways. Because after all, they bid it as one job. We can't separate it out. But that's what it has cost every year to do all the streets and the driveways in Bingham Woods
Okay, because
every
that-
winter.
because
And
that-
salt,
I-
all
I-
of it,
I-
the
I
whole
just,
snow contract.
I'm not sure that it cost the village $80,000 to do this roads.
Oh, I think you may be right.
Yeah, okay, all right, so
You may well
you're,
be
you're
right. I
you're
don't know.
convinced that that figure is right?
I verified that all the way,
Okay,
yes.
and then the second thing was, and I don't, maybe this got changed after this person saw it, but, they were concerned about the police protection, although it seems to me you say limited services.
Yes,
And then you've got a footnote that says no traffic enforcement. Is
right,
the person made the point that, well, you know, we do get police service. I mean, there are,
you get fire,
right,
if they're breaking in, the cops will come.
right. People come and.
But
check
if they're
your house,
speeding,
if
running stop signs, even if they're blocking a fire hydrant, which is a
Right.
public safety issue, no help.
Right, but I mean, people, I mean,
And that's not just true here. Ken has checked it. I was told the same thing by Beverly Hills Public Safety. They cannot enforce on private streets.
Makes sense.
right, okay, and then the last comment that I have, and it's just, it's not directly related to the memo, but, at the last meeting, DE and I promised that we would take back to the council, your request in terms of like, should we get started on this, idea about, the piggybacking, the roads concept, and we did that on Monday.
did
night.
you?
We did that on Monday night, we talked about that,
Okay.
and,
And we've certainly discussed it here about.
I watched.
If I may interrupt,
sure,
I watched the.
that, not saying, but in this committee, we've talked about, I think several of the things that have come up that if there is a project going on, that we contact
The word,
all the private and say, hey, guys,
Right.
we're doing this.
the word
can you-"
should go out.
Right.
If you're interested, you want to join in this
Yeah,
project.
exactly,
Yes.
yeah.
right, I think that the council's response was, you know, it sounds like a good idea. They didn't think that we were far enough along to like start contacting people yet.
Yeah,
Although, just from the meeting, I got the impression that, Bingham Woods, it looks like it's unlikely that they would be in the position because they just.
Yeah, they
done
just
those,
done one.
Right.
right.
Orchard
Right.
Trails might be interested in a few years, because in a few years, they apparently are gonna be doing theirs. Bingham Point, I don't have any idea about. Cardinal Lane, probably not, because they just did theirs. So,
It might be a timing thing.
so I just
Like-
wanted you to know that we did do what we said we were gonna
Mhm.
do, and the idea, I think, was like, it's a good idea, we ought to try to do it when we get to that point. But they didn't think that we were at that point.
I understand.
I would just
It
make
could
one
be
quick
offered,
comment. There
even
is
not
a-
having an offer by the village makes it more fair.
there is a private road, Bingham Court.
Mhm.
And Bingham Court is not in great shape. So it could be an example where that could piggyback off
Yeah,
of work that
that'd
we
be a
do on
perfect
Bingham Road,
example,
for
right.
instance.
That would be a
So
perfect.
that's an
example.
example that we're looking at.
Just to clarify really quick, Kurt, you mentioned Orchard Trail, I believe you meant Outlook Trail,
I did.
Outland.
I'm
Outland,
sorry.
yes.
Outland,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wanna make sure nobody's
Yeah.
confused, because Orchard Trail is a public road.
And it's not a novel idea. I understand from Ken that Beverly Hills and Bingham have combined projects.
Correct.
For everybody's mutual benefit,
And,
So
and
it-
we use Public Works from Beverly Hills to
right?
do all the work here in Lincoln.
Correct.
So,
So, and finally, thank you for your work on that. putting it together.
okay, Kathy's
Okay,
down there.
Tony, what is the law that restricts Franklin Bingham Farm Police Department from enforcing traffic laws?
I have asked that question and so has Ken. And I would ask it of Beverly Hills Public Safety when I got the same answer from them. It's some kind of state restriction, I think. It must be that won't let them come on private property. Now, I know they can enforce in the shopping center. But I don't know if they can ticket people in the shopping center.
Could be the difference between residential, commercial. I don't know.
I don't know the answer, but
I'd like to
it's,
learn more about
you get the same answer every place you ask and everyone you ask.
It's the same
So-
thing if you are speeding in a parking lot. There's
Right.
nothing they can do, unless there's an accident,
Then,
and even then, they're
You
reluctant to
can't do
show up.
anything.
yes,
I
that seems to be
believe-
true.
I believe the distinction is less so enforcement and more so patrolling. Because they can't patrol on a private property.
Yes,
So if a road is private, they're not gonna drive there and look for speeders.
That's a good
Now,
answer.
if you live on a private street and you see somebody swerving in your neighborhood, clearly a
Yeah.
dangerous driver, and you call the police, they do respond to a call.
apparently, well, if they were endangering somebody, but
Correct.
the president at Bingham Woods has told me that she has called repeatedly because we have one intersection that is commonly the stop sign is run. People come off 13, they shoot right down, they run that stop sign. And she has said, can you please do some enforcement there so that we can cut back on that? They won't.
Right, well, that's what I mean,
They
because,
will.
to enforce
Right.
that, they have to physically be present
Be
there
there.
before it happens,
Yes,
which is the
right.
patrolling of private property
Yeah.
that they can't do.
Right, and I know the fire hydrant thing, because I had a
Right.
fire hydrant in front of my house, and there'd be somebody blocking it, and I'd call. They were sorry, they couldn't help.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
I only had 4 pushes last winter for snow.
Yes,
Two more than
It's
me.
true.
Or 5,
right,
4 or 5, I can't remember.
a
And,
good year to be in the snow pushing business.
Yeah.
well, bad year, I mean, that's $60 a push.
Oh, if you're paying per
And I had
push, right,
parking areas and circular drive and, yeah, that's right, I did pay by the push.
okay.
Do you pay by the push?
I think Bingham Woods had a snow contract for
Oh.
the season,
Yeah.
so that's a loser. You know, it's a gamble for both sides. I think per push is the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom of the list. They do their contract.
Yeah,
fee
sure,
first,
sure they
bottom.
do, that's
So,
true. And I remember really one terrible winter when the snow people were going belly up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You had a contract, but they didn't come because they'd lost their shirts,
It
so.
could- it could-
Well, you gotta look at it like life insurance. You hope you'll use it.
Yeah.
Okay,
True.
all right, we're done with Tony's. Okay,
You wanna talk about it?
I'll talk about this.
it is presenting between the two of you.
Both of us.
We're gonna split it up.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on.
A tag team here.
So, we didn't get as far as I'd hoped to on this project, mainly because I got involved in getting ready for the actual council meeting that occurred a couple of months ago, but we have made some progress, and the first thing that we did that I'll talk about before I, let Eric talk about what he worked on, is we did have a meeting with, the village council, with regards to special assessment districts, and, he said that while it would be possible to do one SID for all the public roads in the village, that he opted for, he suggested that he didn't think that that was a good option, and he thought it should be split up into several based on the roads that you were doing.
I'm sorry, Kurt, who's he?
Our village attorney.
Attorney, thank you.
And we talked about, you know, like, how do you do it? Do you do it like based on footage or based on lots? And his idea was that he thought it would be much better to do it on lots, by lots rather than by footage. It would take about 6 to 9 months to get a special assessment district started if the council ever voted to do it. That legal fees for special assessment district would be about $2,000. And the one thing that I really didn't know about was that, if an SID is established for road repair projects, you have to start the projects like right away. The theory being that you can't assess somebody and go 3 or 4 years and collect the assessments and then start the road projects, because if somebody is paying a special assessment in year 1 and they move in year 3, then they've paid a bunch of money and they don't get the benefit of it. So that sort of limits how you could do the special assessments. You'd have to pretty much, you know, start the road, like start the engineering right away and start the road like within a year, and then maybe if you break the special assessment up, it would be like after the road was done. So you'd have to figure out like how to pay for the road while you're still collecting the special assessment. So that I thought was a fairly important item. And then the other thing that I clearly did not know about was that I thought the council could like put together a proposal and put it on the ballot and let people vote on it as sort of like an advisory vote. And apparently you're not allowed to do advisory votes in Michigan. So you can't,
Are those called straw votes?
I guess, yeah. So you're not, so what I had hoped to do is apparently not doable. You could put like a millage proposal for, say, like increase the millage by 1 mil. And then, you know, for 5 years, and you could put that on the ballot, and then if it passed, it would be binding. But you can't just like say, you know, can we do 1 mil increase in a special assessment? What do you guys think about it? That apparently you can't get on the ballot. So those are just comments that we learned from the attorney in terms of the whole special assessment thing. And then Eric did a bunch of work on trying to figure out like what a special assessment would look like.
So, thanks, everybody. One quick comment relevant to your last statement, Kurt. Based on my research, while you can't put it on the ballot, there is a process required for special assessment that requires public hearings to be posted, public hearings to be held. In this case, you may even have to have 2 of them. I'm looking at, yeah, but you have to have public hearings to present the case and allow all the residents of the village to have their input at a hearing, not at a ballot box. So there is
They
at
do,
least a
they do vote
process.
eventually, right?
No.
No?
Well, the special assessments can be done in one of 2 ways. Way number one is the council can vote on it.
Mhm.
But, and the second way is that residents could actually petition to have a special assessment, and then it could come before the council, and if the council agreed, it would be enacted that way. So it's one of those 2 ways.
Okay, so you still have your calculations on what?
Yeah, let's go through some of it. You guys all have copies of it?
Yep.
Okay. So maybe I'll make a few opening comments, a little background, because, you know, Larry's here. I don't know who might be on the video or the audio or both. So this committee's been meeting every other week since late January. So there's been a lot of hours put into this. We've spent a lot of time outside of the meetings collecting data. Like Kurt said, meeting with lawyers, meeting with the engineering consultants. So I think we've come a long way with at least the knowledge of how this might work so that we can put together a project to improve the roads in the village. I will say one thing as we've come through this, because you can all have an opinion. You may like something, you may not like something, whatever. But for sure, this has matured to the point that it's clear being part of this committee that to not take in consideration at all the private road people would be a big mistake. And there's the other side of it too. To not take in consideration the people that live on the local roads would also be a mistake. Because the private road people could say, we're not paying anything. And the local road people would go, well, then we're just not gonna do it because we can't afford it. So it's a 2-sided issue. It's not just one or the other. They have to be considered together. Kurt and I volunteered to do this, I think for maybe any number of reasons, not the least of which Kurt lives on a private road. I live on a public village road. Before I go into this, I want to give credit to somebody that's not here tonight, Jim Burley. Jim Burley did a lot of work on the original costs that were presented by HRC. And he brought those costs down substantially. And again, we've had follow-up meetings to make sure that his assumptions and conclusions were valid, and we've proven that to be the case. So when you look at this, Jim's not here tonight, unfortunately, but when you look at what we're going to talk about, it's the exact same costs that Jim has used. We're not making up our own numbers. We're using numbers we've already vetted, and we say this is the right thing to do.
And what Jim is doing, he's got proposals that are going to go to the council. Okay, they're not anything he really wants to support, they're just proposals. Same thing for Eric.
So Jim's developed the costs, we're using them. We're also using HRC's data on how much road footage there is, where it is, ratings that they call Pacer ratings, which is a very easy to explain, not easy to do, but it's a visual drive around basically, where people that are trained to look at the roads can actually give a rating from 0 to 10, where 0 is very poor and 10 is great. In this, as we talk about the proposal, we've limited it to Bristol Lane, Bristol Court, Brittner Court, Sager Court. That is the section of Bingham Farms that is to the south of 13 Mile. So when we get to special assessment districts, one of the things that has to be considered is are you getting a direct benefit from that? They get a direct benefit from that, but Bingham Road may not. A special assessment district on Bingham Road, you get a direct benefit, and maybe others don't. So that's part of the proposal as well. I can tell you for sure, in the work we've done, special assessment districts are quite common in assessing residents in ways to do many different types of projects, including road work. And the last thing I'll say before we go into it, I'm more concerned tonight to hear, and maybe we've already heard a lot of it. I'm more concerned tonight, not about necessarily the financial calculations. But I want to make sure everybody understands the logic. And then I think it would be good at some point to make sure we're debating the logic and say that makes sense or not. So here's the logic. Special assessment districts will be established for different sections of the village roads, depending on how people are benefiting. We believe there's going to be at least 2, and there'll likely be 3. And they'll be done over a period of several years. We have existing available funds. We'll get to the detail in a minute. We're recommending, or the logic would be that we would allocate those available funds for road construction based on the length of the roads. We'll talk about how we do that. First of all, we're gonna have to allocate it based on local roads versus major roads. We'll talk about why. You live on Bingham Road. Bingham Road is the only major road in the village. Everything else is called a local road, and there's distinctions that need to be
Who
understood.
made those distinctions?
The Act 51 money that we receive as a village every year. It actually just very specifically says that this money must be used for local roads and this money must be used for major roads.
And somebody made those distinctions?
Yes, yeah, we'll talk
Who
about.
that would be?
Well, that's when you say we made the distinctions, you may help me. I mean, the
Uh,
state's making those.
Yeah, that's decided by
distinctions.
this, the state qualifies roads as major and local.
In a local area?
Correct.
Yes, yeah. State does that, and then Bill, the treasurer, keeps track of where the funds are and how they can be allocated. So we'll look at local roads versus major roads, then we'll look at the length of the road and how we allocate the money. There's some roads we're not going to consider. Why are we not going to consider them? They either have very high Pacer ratings already, or in some cases, the investment needed to get them up to a certain Pacer rating is going to be not a heavy investment. We're also, part of the logic is any investment required above the allocated funds will be financed. This is this is where it gets into some of your concerns, Larry. The finance portion, we're saying as part of the logic will be paid for by a combination of a special assessment and a millage increase. The special assessment is going to be assigned based on per lot. There's only 2 ways to do it, from my understanding. It's per lot or per frontage foot. You've got a neighbor that has an umbrella lot. That person would pay almost nothing. There's a property in off of Bristol Lane that's actually an island all the way around that property, and they would be paying $125,000 in assessments just because that's the way the footage works. So maybe it's good for Bloomfield Village where everybody's pretty standard, but we don't have a standard village when it comes to frontage. So let's go into the actual proposal. So to start with, the village council actually gave us direction that they would desire to have an overall average Pacer rating of 5 to 6. What does that mean? A 5 to 6 means that the maintenance would be non-structural preservation treatments. So not really expensive to take care of and maintain to make sure we're extending the life of roads. So that was one of our guidelines. Now I'm going to get into some detail, and I apologize for it, but I think it's important, even if it becomes a bit boring. So we have almost 27,000 feet of public roads in Bingham Farms. It's over 5 miles. Most of those roads have been rated by our engineering consulting company as either a 3 or a 4. So we're starting to get into that category where you're going to have structural renewal, which is very expensive. Even more so, you're going to have complete reconstruction, which is the most expensive. At some point, the roads get to a point you can't do anything with them. Bingham Road is the only road considered as a major road. Bingham Road is 1 mile long, it's 5,280 feet. We've already made it, the reason it's important is because Act 51 money restricts money to be used for major roads or local roads. At this point in time, the major road fund for Bingham Farms is $842,068. Of the total we have for available roads, that much has to be used on Bingham Road. And the rest has to be used on all the other local roads. The current balance that we have as a village that can be allocated to the roads is round numbers $2.76 million. That's right now available. It's been collected from taxes from everybody that the council has put aside to give to help support this type of project. If we take that total amount and we remove the major road fund that I just mentioned, then what's available for all the other village local roads is $1.9 million. So it's real important as we look at this to make that distinction. Now we can remove the length of Bingham Road from all the other roads, and we're down to 21,700 feet. Old Stage Road and Coach Light Road are the only concrete roads in the village. Old Stage Road has a Paisley rating already of 4 to 6. Coach Light Road has a Paisley rating of 5. Engineering consultants have told us what their recommendation would be to bring them up to even a higher Paisley rating. And it's not, in the scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. Also, Brooks Lane is in the village. They have a Paisley rating of 8. So we're not going to consider them at this point in time either. If we take all the length of those roads away, we're now down to 19,500 feet. Now we got Timber Trail. If you've walked on Timber Trail, which I have a million times, and a lot of people sitting over here have as well, it's the recommendation to designate it to become a path. It's already way beyond reconstruction. It's almost not a road anymore. You have to be careful walking. So it's a path that would be suitable for walking, for biking, but not for any motorized vehicles other than emergency vehicles. We've looked at grants, we've looked at lower cost options. All said and done, we don't believe there's a lot of money that needs to be spent on Timber Trail. And so we're going to remove it from the allocation of funds as well. There is one small section of Timber Trail. There's one house that accesses Timber Trail. That will have to be considered because you're not going to be able to make it a walking path. You're going to have to reconstruct it to a proper Paisley rating. And then again, it's minutia. There's 100 feet at the end of Bristol Court. It's been deemed in good condition. So that leaves us with $17,580 that need rehabilitation to bring them up to the Paisley ratings of 5, 6, or even better. With that many feet of roads, with $1.9 million available, this is the allocation I'm talking about. We can allocate $109.10 per foot of road with the money that we currently have. And that's how we're going to model Bristol Lane, Sager Court, Bristol Court, Brittner Court, and we're going to call it a phase 1 special assessment district. In that there's 6,895 feet of roads. If we allocate based on that proportion, they will receive to do their project $752,245. Using Jim Burley's estimates for those roads, it's going to cost $1.649 million. The difference is $897,000. They're going to get money from the village. They need $897,000 more to be financed so they can do their project. We're looking at those roads for 2 reasons. They were last resurfaced in 2005, and with few exceptions, they're the roads that are now the oldest since their last resurfacing. They're also the roads that the engineering consultants claim to be the worst for different reasons necessarily, but they need some help and sooner than later. So we're saying, let's start construction in 2025, maybe even 2026, that can be determined. There are 67 lots on those 4 streets. Okay, we're not going to talk about footage. We're going to talk about per lot. There's 67 lots. If the whole, I said 897,000. I'm going to make it easy for me. I'm going to say $900,000. If every person on that street were assessed, we would have to assess $13,392 per lot. So we can consider financing options, because I don't think the people that live over there are all gonna say, that's okay, we'll just pay it all once.
I don't believe that.
They need $900,000. Possible ways to finance it. The village has enough money to do it all. They've got more than enough money to do everything over there. I presume, I may not be right, that the village could decide to loan them the money to do the roads at some kind of interest rate. I think that would be a problem, because when the next phase comes, the next people are gonna go, well, where's my money? But it's at least something to consider. We've looked at what they call SIB loans, state infrastructure bank loans. The money could be borrowed there. Good terms. It could be borrowed for even up to 20 years without going through a lot of calculations. That assessment, if we looked at it per lot, per year, over 20 years, those 67 residents would be paying $1,109 a year in assessment. I'm gonna say this, I was hoping Mason was gonna be here tonight. I'm pretty good with math models. I'm not well versed in complex financial models. So we're going to need some help to be perfect. But I will say this, the numbers I believe to be directionally correct. They're not exact. I may sound like they're exact, but they are directionally correct. We could issue a bond. We've had people come and talk to us about bonds. Bonds, at least the way she explains it, I'm having discussion with some other people, works something like a mortgage where you're paying a principal and interest each month. That probably could lower the assessment per year a little bit, but there's still at $1,020 per year per lot to do a bond issue and pay it off over 20 years. Now, all the other roads have got to be done in the same way, but because we're doing a lot of this work and it's a lot of detailed work, again, we just want to make sure the logic is sound. I would guess, based on the little work I've done, it's not going to be much different from the people that live on other roads in this village. Options for, say, a phase 2 special assessment district. I think a good one could be actually just Bingham Road. Bingham Road is the major road. It has money that has to be spent for it. I don't know the right timing, but I think it would be the second one, maybe 2027, 2028 kind of time frame, where that special assessment district could be set up and established.
It has a higher PASER rating too, right?
No, it doesn't. It's
doesn't?
about the same. But what the engineers tell us, without getting into a lot of minutia, is the ground under that road is superb. So the foundation is so good that they wouldn't even consider a reconstruction of it. Just do what they were calling a mill and fill, basically grind off a couple of inches and resurface the whole thing. And it'll be just as good as new, because the ground underneath is as good as it gets. And the third special assessment district could be the rest of the roads. The road I live on, Bingham Road, Old Orchard Road, Hickory Hollow, Shagbark, I can't remember. Shagwood. And again, maybe even target out to 2029 or 2030. And some of these dates I'm using is because we're told the average road should last between 15 and 20 years in the state of Michigan. If I look at 20 years, and frankly, because again, we're on these roads all the time, we walk these roads, we meet people and talk on these roads. I don't know that there's a huge urgency to try to do these roads sooner than they need to be done. So maybe even, like I said, 2029 or 2030. But that's again, looking at when was their last resurfacing. Now, every number I've used so far assumes that the private road people contribute nothing, okay? That's a premise that I think we're all saying is not correct. So let's talk a little bit about possibilities. Because again, the issue of fairness gets brought up, and that's fine, but the issue of fairness means what is fair? Who pays what? Now, then it gets more complicated. Because there's a whole different dynamic of private roads here. We got private roads that do not intersect with any other road, whether it's major or local in the village, specifically Bingham Woods, Outland Trails, Cardinal Lane, Pioneer Avenue. And we actually have a handful of residents whose driveway access is directly to 13 Mile and 14 Mile. So you got a group of people that in theory would never get on the roads for any reason, nor would any service provider or post office deliverer or Amazon truck ever have to get on a village road to service them, okay? There's 208 residences by using Zoom and Google Earth that fall into that category. 208 that in theory would never have to get on a village road. Now you got private roads that actually do intersect. And in this case, the private roads that do intersect, all intersect with Bingham Road. And those are Bingham Point, Woodland Drive, and Bingham Court. They're all private drives. They all have to use Bingham Lane to get to their homes. Service providers have to use Bingham Lane to get to their homes. And so how do we start treating these people? Okay. There's 45 more people that fall into that category. People, it's not, people's not right. There's 45 residences that fall in that category. And then there's the people that we just mentioned because their roads are in good shape that may not be part of any near-term assessment district. And there's another 40 people that fall into that category. So we have a total of back to how many people live where. We have a total of 293 residences in these categories that I just mentioned, out of a total of 493 Bingham Farm residences. So if somebody doesn't help out of all these we've talked about, 200 residences are going to be paying for these roads. And those are the numbers kind of like I was indicating before. So here's where we can at least have discussion. Have the residents who live in the special assessment district who will actually receive the direct benefit of the road improvement pay for 100% of the cost of the, now I'm going to be, try to be clear here, 100% of the principal cost of the project that's above the allocation of funds. So I just mentioned that first special assessment district, they're going to get $700 and some odd thousand from the village. They're going to have to borrow $900,000. Let them be responsible for the $900,000. Okay. Now, through a millage increase, we can now have everybody in the village, including the commercial property, help pay for the interest on these things. We can look at this 50 different ways, but this is just one way to look at it. And so how do you participate if you're on a private road? Maybe you're willing to say, I'll help by accepting some millage increase that will be directed specifically to paying off the loan. Funds required to improve the roads, we already mentioned it, $900,000 in the case of this first district, 67 lots. Just to pay the $900,000, the 67 lots will have to pay $672 a year in a special assessment. Still not a small amount of money, but it's not the $1,100 we were talking about before. So $672 a lot would pay off the $900,000 that they need to borrow. Now, the interest, again, these calculations I will claim are directionally correct, but we need some work from an expert. The interest could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $466,000. That'd be $23,000 a year. If a 1 mil increase in taxes brings in about $200,000 a year, it'd be only a fractional percentage of a millage increase. In this case, the math works out to be about 0.12 mil increase. That's not a lot of money, but you're spreading it over all 500 residences that live in the village.
Would that be on top of what you said they would be paying the principal?
The answer is in this, yes, Larry, because what I believe to be true, which may or may not be true, but I believe it to be true, is when you increase millage, you can't do it for certain people one way and other people another way.
Okay, so the figure you said that $675,000 or $675
Yeah,
for those lots
yeah.
isn't the true picture.
No, I'm gonna give you.
Because it's that plus the interest.
And I'm gonna give you the true picture. The true picture by our calculations is $722 a year for 20 years. Now, that 20 years is if you leave your home and sell it to somebody else, that assessment transfers to the new owner. Okay. But it will show as a line item on the tax bill of somewhere around $720.
And that's the principal of the, plus the.
Plus the millage.
The millage.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious,
Okay.
would that be tax deductible like
No,
taxes are?
no, it's not tax deductible.
How do we
that's-
make it tax deductible?
Well, you could buy some of our bonds that we want to issue,
Municipal
and they're
bond.
tax exempt bonds. That could pay some money, but the answer unfortunately is not. That was one of the questions we did cover with the lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's a good question. But it's not tax deductible.
Generally my first question.
What about getting some federal involvement?
Don't know, I mean, I don't know what's available in federal
Well,
grants.
we could move the village
Yeah.
to south of the Rio Grande, and all the common thoughts.
You really want to go there?
The real-
Well, we can go out and have a drink afterwards. Yeah. Let me just finish because I'm almost finished. If we look at it the way we just looked at it. And I'm using the word the village, meaning the village and all the people that pay taxes that have created the funds that are available, that will help create more funds over the next 20 years, will pay approximately 57% of the road improvement. And the people that live on the roads will pay approximately 43%. Based on what our lawyer was telling us in Auburn Hills, that's kind of the way they look at it when they do special assessment districts is we'll pay half and other people pay half through a special assessment. If it's fair we're talking about, I think 58% village paying, 43% the residents that live on these roads pay. It's probably a compromise at least, and maybe a fair outcome depending on where we end up. So it's a lot of complication, it's a lot of numbers. We've got funds, how do we allocate those funds? How do we treat the different types of private residences? Who pays for what? It's at least something that considers everybody.
Okay. That's complicated.
You know why? Because it is complicated.
It's true.
Now, is this just with some of these numbers, is just a 0.12 millage increase?
That's what these numbers are, D.
Okay,
Uh,
so if the village said, because we know village is gonna have to go up anyway.
Right.
Because everything else is going. But if the village then decided, let's go 1.12 mils. That would then reduce everything again, but still having the same,
effect.
the same effect, but still having that 57.6% versus 40.
Yes.
So it's still done that way, but now it's a little bit more in taxes, but a little bit less in the special assessment.
That's correct.
So no matter what we do with the millage increase, we can decrease some things
That's
in
correct.
the SAD. Okay,
But I would be mistaken by not saying this. If you end up with three special assessment districts, the same thing will be applied each time. So if the millage increase is 0.12 for this first one, 3 years from now, it could be another 0.12 for the second
so
one.
now we're talking.
In 5 years, it
2.4.
could be something in there.
Okay, so.
So not to mislead anybody, this is just those roads, Bristol Lane and its courts.
Right.
Again, I repeat, I think it's gonna be quite similar on the other roads in the area.
Yeah,
Okay, Kathy?
Yeah, Kathy Hageman, 32671 Bingham Lane. My question was way up before you started your explanation. But based on your calculation, would the village still be putting in like the $150,000 per year that they have been doing over the last 3 or 4 years? Or will that stop?
The assumptions that have been made up until this point, Kathy, is whether it's, and it's not just this proposal, but some of the others as well, is that money should be spent doing preventative maintenance on the roads.
Okay,
And that way we extend the life on the roads. Now, some years could it be 80,000, another year 200,000. I'm sure the council will make sure and do their best. But I think part of the follow-up on this is how do we maintain the roads once we get them to the point we want them? And that's probably not totally fair. How do we maintain them better? Maybe. It's not like we don't maintain them. And there's still an open question that I know Mason was working on, is once you do this, in 20 years, when the roads need doing again, where's the money gonna come from? It's a cycle, obviously, and it's gonna be a 20, maybe better preventative maintenance, maybe the next cycle is 25 or 30 years. But it's not a one-off. It may be a one-off for all of us sitting in this room, but somebody's gonna be in your house in 20 years, and face the same problem. And somehow the village has to address that.
So the millage that you're proposing in some of these, that the 0.12 millage. Okay, I had the question, then it went away. That then, that could be almost in perpetuity, in other words, continue. So then at the end of the 20 years, once the loans are paid off, which is what this is for, we still have that money coming in that could then go back to the roads and or however the village decides
Right.
to use it. Okay,
The only difference being, well, you have $2.7 million in 20 years to give or maybe you can have $5 million or 10 million. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the start point here is that we have 2.7 million.
right.
But the costs are gonna continue as far into the future as you can imagine.
Yeah.
That's what makes a lot of the financial models complicated, because you have inflation. That's on one side. On the other side, you've got property valuations going up, which by default increases the income of the village. You're collecting this money over 20 years where you won't have to pay the $900,000 until it matures. Over the course of those years, you can have a big interest income off of that.
A balloon.
So there's a lot of things that need to be worked through to come up with as good a number as possible. But I'm gonna need some help from somebody to do that. Hey,
Jeff,
Jeff.
name and address.
Jeff Ducombe, 30153 Bristol Lane. Commend you, Eric, for what you've done here. I've long thought about how the village has become balkanized. Right? To Tony's point, how it's been the way it's evolved. And you've put quite a bit of work into analyzing the special assessment alternative. And I guess I would charge the committee, and my request to the committee, as you're looking at the alternatives, your point about looking at the whole gamut of alternatives at this point in time. I've always thought that the alternative or having the private roads become public roads. The one you speak about here on page, right, 4 years. Allow private road to be folded in the village projects. Okay, that's how we offer the option of conveying private roads to the village. I think this is the one you're speaking at. That look at that on a wholesale basis would really resolve once and for all this balkanized situation. I'm not saying it's the right alternative or a better alternative. But if you're gonna look at the gamut, that needs to be included in your assessments and your analysis. To really make sure you've covered the waterfront and be able to speak to all the alternatives. So when the question comes up at a public hearing or a Q&A session, or whatever, you can speak to it. Otherwise say, well, you thought about it, but didn't look at it. So you look kind of like you didn't do the job. I just would really suggest that you really give that some serious consideration.
Jeff, the way I look at it is that very shortly, we're gonna be presenting these proposals to the village council. It's up to them to use the information that all of us have put together and come up with what they wanna do. Sure. They could combine two proposals and they can do anything they want. We've just got a bunch of information. They'll make the call. We're not gonna make the call.
I'm not asking, all I'm saying is that add to your arsenal of alternatives you're presenting. The one called make the private roads all public.
Well, that is part of my,
It's hers.
But you have, do the math.
well, you have to,
You've done the math on the special assessment, I get that. Now, do the analysis, the full analysis on the other alternative. that you mentioned, you've got it on a page, but you haven't studied it, you haven't run it out.
We've got it. Tony's got numbers.
I
Hmm.
like to see the analysis
But
of
you
that.
can't. When
I don't think
we did this in.
That is not a, I don't think that's a, I think that's a throwaway comment that's not true. I'm not gonna call you a liar, but you have not run out the analysis called make the private roads public in the full, what that means, everybody's villages, what roads need to be fixed, when they need to be fixed.
Okay,
When this was explored in real life in Beverly Hills, you had to have an engineering study of the condition of the road in question. So you knew, is this road a liability or an asset? If it's a liability, then the neighborhood pays the village to take the road off their hands. You need a number for that.
Great.
But
What you're coming to, you've got a model you can follow
But
to
you-
apply that model to Bingham
we
Park.
have to pay pay an engineer to evaluate these roads.
I would,
And
I would suggest you've already got that.
don't
Because,
think so.
because I've heard it said here that the Bingham Woods roads are in such a shape that we don't really need to have any major work in front of 10 years. I don't know who said that, but someone did that.
We're not looking at projects at all.
I can add a comment to that. The reason private roads have to undergo an engineering study before that consideration is because even if a private road has been done yesterday and it's in tip-top shape,
Yeah,
because it's a private road, it doesn't have to follow the same standards and engineering regulations as a public road. Therefore, it can be done to an inferior quality. That's
Very
why that
different
private road
standards.
might have to pay the village to
all
bring
I'm
it up
saying,
to
yeah,
that.
that becomes part of the analysis you gotta go through.
I understand.
The private road.
But that analysis costs money and
Costs a
this
lot.
body is not authorized to spend village funds on that.
and it all depends on the HOA that's involved as to whether they want to do
Whether
it.
they want to.
Yeah.
Maybe some people want the cachet
No, I get
over
the
it.
complexity of the situation. You make some assumptions and you can probably spitball it in the ballpark. But to do nothing, just suggests to me you kind of wash your hand of alternative, what is the only one that's really adjust the balkanized situation you got in total.
I love the solution, but I don't think we're equipped to do the analysis on it.
Yeah, we don't have.
I think it's a great solution. If I were emperor, that's what I would do, but.
Jump in,
we gotta,
Kathy.
I really think that you have more knowledge and more understanding than you think you've got, and just, you can make some assumptions, you can ballpark it.
We haven't ballparked anything yet, have we? I mean, we
we'll
haven't.
see how we can.
I haven't looked at
Well,
it.
Just to throw another curveball in, everyone is assuming that all the private roads meet the requirements of a public road.
That's true.
The village hasn't historically looked at this exact situation for a number, Cardinal Lane, for instance, they had come very early on and asked to become a public road. It's not wide enough to be a public road, so to come up with the idea of all the private roads, and I
Won't work
don't
for all
know.
of them. You're right.
It's not gonna work for all of them, but for the major ones. I know Bingham Road or Bingham Woods, when we looked at it, met those standards.
Right.
But I don't know what other private roads, Outland Trail probably will not make it.
Probably not.
Bingham
Bingham Point
Court.
is, I'm not sure.
I'm
Right.
not sure, Bingham Court, who knows? So I think. When we did it, Woodland came at one point, and there would be a substantial cost for us to take it over if it met those specs. And that can also be a deterrent. So I know what you're saying, Jeff, and in a perfect world. Yeah, go for it.
Right.
But there's so much that has to go into this concept of bringing private roads public. And then you're gonna get even more disparity if you do one and you can't do the other.
So write down what you know, write down what you don't know, and take it as far as you can. But to do nothing just falls way short of your charge.
But it depends on whether the association
Either
wants
one.
to make any difference what information we find. If the association decides they don't want any part of that, they're not gonna do it.
That's the threshold question. Is
Exactly.
do you want to
Exactly.
do this?
I would not proceed until you had some form of.
Some indication
Yeah,
of whether these
exactly.
neighborhoods are
But then,
interested in.
if they choose not to be part, if they choose, I don't wanna be, part of this village from a road standpoint. Then, okay, that's fine, but then turn around and don't bitch about the fact that you're not getting, money from the village
And
to help
politically,
help
that's
fix the
true.
roads.
That's
Right.
obvious.
You know, you can't have it both ways.
So you had the opportunity, so.
One of the things we talked about earlier was the $80,000 for snow plowing for Bingham Woods. If we went in there and let's say we made it a public road, we now snow plow. Every single one of those residents now has to worry about their driveway.
Right,
They don't right now.
That's right.
well, the association
would
would
be-
still contract with the
Right, so
driveways,
then,
but
so then it's still gonna cost them, so they may just say,
they might,
There's,
Right.
there's
Forget it.
dozens and dozens of those types of details that
Yeah.
gets involved here.
we don't have time or the effort to go to do that as this committee. It isn't gonna happen.
Just write down what you know, D, and write down what you don't know, and take it as far as you can.
that's what we've done.
We've done it.
We've done
That's
that.
exactly
I
what we've
think,
done.
I think you've done a great job on this, on the special assessment thing. Not that I'm not sure, I'm not here to say I agree with it, even though I commend it. I don't think you've taken that full step you can take on the other alternative. I think you've glossed it over. And
That probably will not be one of our recommendations.
I'm not saying it couldn't be, D, that's not
Well, we
my
aren't
point.
gonna recommend.
My point is not
Well,
that,
one of our, yeah, I'm sorry, not recommend, well,
but by the way, you just said a minute, ago, you're not gonna make them recommend anything.
All right,
No,
Mr. Chairman, I think we really had enough back and forth on this issue, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to make a comment or two on some of what Eric is talked about.
Okay.
And I commend you for all the work you've done. I don't think that this is, and I think you would agree that this is not quite in its final
No.
form. It's like
The
proposal
financial
3
model is not in the final.
and proposal 4 are. And, although I'm like firmly in the camp of, looking at special assessments, I'm uncomfortable with $1,000 a year for 20 years. And I just think that's just to me is a lot. So one of the things that I was looking at and just am asking for for people's thoughts is that when I look at proposal 3, which is one of Jim Berger's proposal, which I think is in kind of a final form in which we're gonna present. His table 3 includes a 2 mil increase in property taxes for 6 years. What would people think if table 3 was revised so that it was a 1 mil increase in property taxes for 6 years with the money that we would have raised from that second mill instead being raised by a special assessment? In other words, like split the difference. Does that sound reasonable to anybody, or am I like?
yeah, that's kind of where I was going with this. If we, instead of 1.2 or 0.12, if we made it a 1 mil increase or a 1.5 mil increase, how much would that reduce? So what you're talking with, you're almost combining what this has with what Jim has here.
Yes, I'm actually like using Jim's numbers as a basis.
Well, kind of what you said, they could take, okay, let's put these two together.
Column A, column B, combined.
Yeah,
That's not, even with the simple models I put together, that's very easy to do.
Yeah.
Because you're just changing. the
Numbers.
formula, yeah, just
Yeah.
changing numbers.
And I'm interested in that because I'm interested in like what that would result in the special assessments being. I hope it would be less.
I don't know what we want.
I would
Yeah.
think.
Over a less number of years too, because, I mean, one of the issues with doing a special assessment for 20 years, I mean, one of the things that the attorney told us is that the special assessments cannot last longer than the value of the road. So 20 years would be like sort of a maximum, but if you did it for 20 years and the road lasts 20 years, that would mean you would be in the position of like finishing the first special assessment and then having to like
Do another.
do another one right away. And I don't think anybody, well, not that I'll be here to worry about it, but I don't think anybody wants to leave to people in 20 years that kind of issue, so. I get,
But if you increase the millage, you can decrease the term of the loan.
You got a lot of variables.
Exactly.
Talking about a hybrid.
right, I'm talking about
Yeah.
I'm talking about a hybrid, more of a,
Yeah.
more of a compromise, and I guess I'm. Speaking sort of against the interest of the people on the private roads, because it would increase their taxes, on the other hand. Maybe 1 mill is palatable, whereas 2 mills might not be palatable, and. For the people on the public roads, maybe an assessment of. $400 a year for 6 years might be more palatable than. $700 for 20 years. I guess that's just was my initial reaction to what you did. And I think what you did is great, and you obviously put a lot of work in it.
Yes.
I'd just like to work on it a little bit longer with you.
No, it's fine, because now a lot of the work's been done, so it becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah.
The one thing I would just make sure everybody remembers is if under an assumption of 3 special assessment districts, each time you do one, you're gonna go back for some amount of millage increase. So if you wanna go with one, maybe part of that model needs to be you go a third, and we can do all those things.
Right,
But if you go with one now, and then we come back to the table in 3 years and say we need another one, and then back to the table in 5 years and need another one. Certainly it will, the math will lead us in the right direction. But just make sure you're remembering to think this is probably the first out of 3 phases.
well, it will be, I'm not. I agree with you, you're gonna have like 3 separate. Projects, if you will, or 3 separate special assessment districts, but I'm not sure based on his numbers on this table 3 that. I mean, cause his chart is supposed to cover all the roads.
That's
And
great.
he's doing it with 2 mills, so if he can do it with 2 mills for all the roads, it seems like. If we did 1 mill. For everybody, and then a special assessment, 3 special assessments.
Yeah.
Maybe,
No, I think
maybe
that's
it will
right.
work.
And if I
I just wanna make sure that we don't come back and it's 1 mil for just this first phase. But I think your thinking is right, because that's what it will be.
Yeah,
If by the time we get to the 3rd special assessment district, the total millage increase is 1, then I think that's probably gonna
Right.
simulate that. pretty
right,
well.
and I can tell you that there are people in the private road areas that won't like a 1 mil increase. They won't, but I think that would be more palatable. Especially if it's for 6 years, than like a 2 mil increase would be, and so,
Well, you'll find out if you put it out to ballot. I mean, you're
Yeah.
supposing a lot of stuff,
yeah, right, you're right, I am.
and just put it out on the ballot and find out how it's accepted, and then you won't have to suppose.
Right, and you can put, as I understand it, the millage increase on the ballot, you can't really put the special assessment card on the ballot.
That's here.
Yeah, so, I mean, what I would propose is that you and I try to work some more with your numbers, and maybe even try to get Jim involved if you think it's necessary. 'Cause I know
Get
you-
Jim involved, and I really wanna get Mason involved.
So clarification, so you can impose it as a special assessment, but a millage has to be voted on?
No, that's
Yeah,
not, that's not
the-
quite true.
The council can vote on the millage too.
The council could vote on a millage, but if you, but there are, for example, Franklin has a special millage for their library, and they have a special millage for this, and those. If you put on the ballot a special millage for roads, then whatever funds you raise from that millage would have to be used on.
I get that part, Kurt, for sure,
Roads,
but. You made a comment earlier that you think any millage impact of the roads needs to be on the ballot. Did I understand
No.
you correctly?
if I said that, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say, the council could vote to increase the millage 3 mills next month. And then it could decide to use all 3 of those mills for roads.
So that is an option.
Yeah, it's an option. It's not one that I would be in favor of doing. I don't wanna, have 7 people decide to vote 3 mills, for everybody in the village. I'm just not.
See, that's not a proposal that we're gonna come
No,
up
hang on.
No,
So-
that's not for us.
That's, I appreciate that. So this is a council question. I get that. But I just want to clarify this. So the special assessments can be imposed without a vote.
Yes.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
that really was all coming from.
Matter of fact, it can't go to.
Yeah, what he was specifying is an SAD millage is not allowed to go to the vote, to the ballot, because then you have, like, for example, the entire village deciding to charge you and the rest of the people on Bristol Lane a special assessment, right?
Right, so SADs can be imposed
Yes,
by the council.
well,
And-
after a public hearing and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have,
I
you have
know
to.
that. You can still, but bottom line, you can still say, hey, we're gonna send you a bill, a property tax bill, and that's gonna be, or 672 a month's gonna be
Right.
for.
Which,
Or
which,
you're
for example,
already-
Birmingham does with their.
Right, that's cool. But then any millage you wanna, go with, you're suggesting just because you don't wanna have 7 people be responsible, any millage increase you wanna put on the ballot as a matter of, I don't know. how you- what we're looking for.
Not necessarily, I
fairness,
mean,
fairness. How's that?
not necessarily, I mean, I think it's likely that there's a very possibility that the council, because of the fire budget, might have to raise the millage this year, and I don't know that that would go for a vote, but when it's something as major as, you know, a $6 million road project, that I would feel, I think, as a council member, me personally, I don't know about the other council members, I would feel uncomfortable doing that, just 7 people making a decision of this importance, this overall importance.
So you could do it, but you don't wanna do it, is what I'm hearing you say.
You know, can I just add, we're not there yet.
No.
We have work to do before we make that decision.
I think the
This
sequence,
committee, yeah,
the sequence is to have the council pick out which proposals that we've constructed. How much is it gonna cost, and then how are you gonna pay for
Yeah,
Right. Makes sense.
those are the two dimensions.
so I think we need to save this conversation for a later time.
I just wanted to send the optics here, that's all, we're
Yeah.
trying to Kurt's
Well,
head.
maybe next meeting or the next meeting or council meeting would be a good time to bring that up.
If I may, Jim's Burley's proposals, if I remember correctly, they didn't include going for any bonds.
Right.
Correct.
It was
That's
strictly,
special,
it
yeah,
was strictly done,
SIB.
or it did include an SID, okay,
Yes.
so it did, okay, so it did include a $2
It
million.
just wanted to, it has a financing.
Okay. Alright,
it?
but not a $10 million bond.
Proposal 4 actually does include a bond.
Okay,
There's different ways to finance.
different ways to finance, okay.
The infrastructure loan is the one I think Jim thinks is most reasonable.
It seems,
Yes.
I agree,
Yeah.
it seems to be, I kind of drifted away from that just to do something different, but it's seems to be a better interest rate.
Right. Okay, we done?
Yeah.
Kathy's worn out completely.
So for next,
I'm exhausted. I need a glass of wine.
so for next meeting, you and I will try to get together.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay, so let's go around the table with member comment.
And it's really.
Eric?
I'm done.
Done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that next time we need to maybe come up with some proposals and evaluate them, but I don't think we're even there yet.
All right, well, let me after Tony, I've got a comment.
Okay.
Just to thank you guys. That was a huge job
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
and I really appreciate it. It's just adds to our,
More than I ever knew I wanted to.
and you've helped us, with it, and that's greatly appreciated.
Okay, so my comment is that I have been in conference with the president of the council. And what she's trying to do is backtrack how much time the council is gonna need once the proposals are put in. And she says there's a process when we have a proposal and we explain it to them that they accept. The council accepts the proposal. So I think it's just, parliamentarian stuff. So when we were backing down the calendar and seeing what needs to happen when, she would like to have us make those presentations on May 20, the May 20 meeting, which is the next meeting of the village council. And what that would mean is that on May 8th, which is our next meeting, which is before the village council meeting, we need to have some formal, semi-formal proposals ready to go. Okay, so just to make sure that the council has plenty of time, when we bomb the council with all these numbers and all these proposals, it's gonna take some time to digest that,
Yeah.
I think. You think?
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, sure.
So to give them more time would, I think, be expedient. As long as we think that by next week, we can have like a 95% accurate proposal for all these 6 or 7 proposals that are coming through. And I don't think my son's proposal needs to be included. That is separate. It's not a road.
Correct.
And so we can put that on the docket for the council in the future. Do you think we can make it next
Well,
meeting?
let me throw this out too. It's our prerogative to when and what we give them. If we think that we're not there yet, then we take more time to flesh something out to give it to them. How, I guess then it becomes how detailed do we want that to be, other than, okay, you got this much money, do it this way. To where we have this, what Eric just came up with, this whole, I mean, he's really fleshed that out beautifully.
Mhm.
Are we ready to give it to them?
Okay, so
Or we say, hey, guys,
Here's the way I see it. These are not legally binding contracts,
Right,
right? And we've got a lawyer here that can approve that idea. And what we give them, they might change it anyway.
yes.
So to think that we're gonna give them something that's 100% complete and it's perfect, I think is not exactly accurate.
and they have the option saying, go back and work on it. some
Or
more.
they have the option to change it. They're not dependent on us. They're
No.
smart people on the council.
Yeah. All we're doing is handing them, here, guys, here's some ideas. That's all we're
That's what I
really.
figured.
That's it.
That's what we're,
They're not legal contracts.
no,
And I'd
we're
like
not.
to see Masons included. So
You
that,
would?
I would, unless you can tell me why you think it should be not.
It's not a road
It's
proposal.
not, yeah.
It's
Well,
It could
it's
be the
probably
next
not-
round of road proposal.
Well,
It's for long-term,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
I would say it could be in like an appendix, like
Yeah,
a
I'd like to see-
future planning
So they at least know about
section,
it.
if you will.
So you at least decide to
Yeah.
start it or not.
Just, for your information, at the last council meeting, the second thing we were asked
Yeah,
to
we're gonna bring up, yeah.
bring up was his proposal, and, the council said that they would really like to hear from him directly. So I think he's gonna be invited, like, to go to a council meeting and present his proposal separately.
that's the impression I got too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then number
Let
two
them
is,
include it. So
Well, but not necessarily on this batch of proposals.
They know about it and I think
Okay.
they're excited about it, but I
Good to
think, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
the number two is, in my view, the proposals 1 through 4 are done.
Correct.
That's my
Okay.
concept. too.
And the only one that we need to get done is like a proposal or two with a special assessment in it. And hopefully,
That won't be a problem.
hopefully we can get that done, within the next 2 weeks or whatever, so that it can come back to the next meeting of this committee. I'm not quite as confident as you are, because I'm not any good with numbers and charts and all that sort of stuff, but,
I need some help to create the proper algorithms, if you will, but that's what I need.
Can Bill help you? Is he?
I don't, I won't say no, but based on my brief conversations with him, I don't think so. But maybe,
I don't know who else can jump in.
I can give him a call and talk to him. I know I can talk to Mason,
Yeah, he might be. I know he does modeling.
he's very good at it. He's very good.
Okay, so let's shoot for that. The next meeting, which is May 8th, let's put whatever we got into a package, doesn't have to be 100% complete. And I think what the council wants is hard copy, and the presentations that we make will be from the hard copy. Not necessarily a PowerPoint, but it's like Tony's got a big, hard copy and she goes through and explains it. I think that's what they want.
So,
So they want us to come and visit, be present.
Be
and
present.
present. Okay,
Okay.
on May 20th.
Mhm. And I guess we need to sort of have a vote among ourselves as to what proposals we're going to consider a proposal. Right?
Yeah.
And you've got two.
Yeah,
Right, I think 1 through 4 are done.
That's my take.
Yours included in the one and two, one and two?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would also suggest too, that we don't, if we think there's more, then let's give them more. It doesn't have to be 3 to 5, it could be 6 or 7, if,
Oh, for sure, yeah, I think it might be
yeah,
six.
yes, they've said, this is what we'd like, well. We're gonna give you more, or we're gonna give you less.
And they could take one of the proposals we bring to them and throw it out.
I think, you know, proposal 1 is basically status quo, like do nothing, so I'm not even sure that counts as a, you know,
Yeah.
a real proposal, so I mean, I think you could, you know, I mean.
Yeah, proposal, basically, it's, you just keep,
If we have 6, we'll just toss 1, you know, and move on.
Okay. All right, so Eric, if you need to send up a white flag or something, let me know, you know.
I know who to call.
Okay, so let's just keep those two dates in mind, 8th for us finalizing things and the 20th for the village council, for all of us to be there. And not necessarily make personal presentations, but to support the proposal. Several of us can, like you two support one proposal, right? Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah.
If after your meeting on the 8th, it might be beneficial to send this over to the council
After the 8th.
after the 8th,
So
as
they
soon
can
as
read
it's ready.
You
To
took the
give
words
them
right, yeah,
the
it's-
additional time to start reviewing it. This is something they
That's a good
can't
idea.
get on the
Right.
Good
17th
idea. I
to
think that's,
discuss on the 20th.
I think that's actually what the president of the council suggested to me.
Yeah.
One of the things we were discussing today is getting it all put together, making it look nice, like a little book, if you will, and of course, digital copies can be provided if we want to give council a little
You-
head start on reading it and.
That's exactly what I was gonna propose, that whatever we come up with, let's get it to them.
Mhm.
Because getting on a Friday to talk about it on a Monday is
Oh.
not enough time.
No,
On the 8th, we can officially go through that process.
Yep.
All right, anything else, anybody? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Uh,
Adjourned.